Hello and welcome to another End User Talk podcast. I'm your hostess, Jameelah, your Lady in Tech. Hello and welcome to the End User Talk podcast. I'm your host, Jameelah, your Lady in Tech, and I have a special guest on the podcast today, and it's going to be a little awkward, but we're going to get through it because we both share the same first name, which is going to be a first here. But I want to welcome you to and thank you for accepting the invitation to my podcast to be a guest and us have this conversation today. Jameelah Ra'oof, PhD. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Jameelah. I'm using it as an opportunity to say my name. I think it sounds fun.
Exactly, right. It's a beautiful name with a beautiful meaning.
Yes,
So
definitely.
I am with you on that. Well, again, I do hope that you are enjoying this day and have had a peaceful weekend as such. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here. I'm always excited to be able to get the perspective and views of other individuals, and that's why I really enjoy having these discussions or conversations with people from all walks of life. Again, this is going to be a first to share the mic with someone of my namesake. But before we go into detail, do you mind giving us an introduction of yourself?
Okay, yeah, I can do that. So I've been in the technology field since I believe college. I started off as a multimedia assistant. I remember for the university where I got my bachelor's degree from, and so from that point on, I kind of was addicted to anything related to technology. And I later went on to be an IT support for Dallas colleges and also teach computer science at Dallas colleges. But when I was there, I noticed that there was a gap between the end user experience, which is, no pun intended, the end user experience as far as how we develop things and what we were taking into consideration when we were creating new softwares or developing courses related to technology. So I went back to school because I wanted to talk about the social aspects of technological use in society. And so that's when I went back to UT Dallas and I started teaching courses there in sociology, but with the technological perspective. And then went on to get the PhD. And I focus most of my research now on artificial intelligence and the impact it has on the social environment, especially as it relates to children. And right now, I'm a senior instructional technologist for a university, Rice University. And I also do some contract work, educational design for some major corporations. So, yeah, got my hands full.
I have to say, listening to you speak, and I also visited your website just to get a little familiar with who you are and what you're about. And I have to tell you, this is a little foresight for me. I was reading your About Me page, and everything that you're doing are things that either I have done or I aspire to do. So it's almost like reading my own, I would say, an autobiography.
Oh, that's cool.
And I love that because I've been in technology for a very long time and I fell in love with technology. Now, I know that's not the sentiment of a lot of people or probably most of my listeners, but I enjoyed it because I came from a point where I was not technically savvy at all. And like most individuals, the only interaction that I had with technology was the brief things that I did at work. And that's it's very a small window because you're excluded to just the tools in the system. It's not a broad knowledge or understanding. So I too share this wanting to help others be familiar with technology, consumer electronics, and be comfortable with the use of it.
Yes.
So what I want to ask you or find out from you is what was your first introduction or how did tech or technology be introduced to you?
So I'll do two parts. I used to tell my students that, when I was teaching computer science, it was not in everyday use. Nobody had phones and all that yet. We were very close to it, right? And so I think on the tail end of my computer science teaching, students started having smartphones regularly and all that sort of stuff. And I would tell them that I don't be afraid of it because I started off not knowing how to hook up a VCR. And I know they didn't know what a VCR was, some of them, but many of them did. And I would always say, just the AV plugs, that's how far away I was from understanding how technology even worked. I said, so the fact that I've come this far with building PCs and creating networks and all these sort of things, it lets you know that it's not something that's just built into certain people, that anybody can create a familiarity and learn things about the technologies we have in society. And I would say that so I always say this, we have these people that come into our lives and they're so impactful, but we don't always know how impactful till like 20 years later sometimes. And I met this beautiful professor at Evergreen State College in Washington State, where I got my bachelor's from. And she was teaching multimedia technology in the lab. And she was very like, cut and dry, not really a very people person, which I'm accused of sometimes too. And so I understood her immediately. I was like, she's all right. She just likes what she's doing and she's not really social. And so when I would go and work all the time, she saw me working and she came to me one day and asked me if I wanted to work into the multimedia lab because I seemed very dedicated. And I always tell people that she doesn't know she completely changed my trajectory completely in life because it was so important for her to see Black women in technology because she was like, it just doesn't, I worked at Microsoft, in the 80s. I was the only person in every room. And I never even considered a career in that direction, but she taught me everything. So everything that I learned about computers for the most part was taught to me in that computer lab by that professor. And then later I went to get the education that allowed me to teach it to other people. So sometimes we have these people that are like huge trajectory shifters that we come in contact with. And she was one for me.
I mean, I love how you say that because it's just, I'm a mother of 3 adult daughters, young adult daughters now,
Mhm.
and they're actually going through that journey themselves and trying to figure out what is it that I want to do professionally. And you never know how you might have an idea about, oh, I think I'm interested in this. And then you get in and you start taking classes and you're meeting other individuals on campuses or even possibly the instructor. And they say, you know what, this might be a better fit for you.
Mhm.
Volunteer, try this or take this course.
Mhm.
And, that's how things change for us. So you just never know where your journey's going to go in
No.
ultimately.
And then other people who are more wise than us and who are more experienced, they can see more in us than we can see in ourselves sometimes when we're young.
And that's the mentor mentee relationship, and that's why
Yes.
those are so important to be able to have access to someone who can hone in and pick up certain things. And like I said, you know what, I don't want to say we're empty vessels, but we are sponges, we are vessels, and we need to be shaped. We
Mhm.
need to be directed and sometimes even redirected in this journey
Yes.
that we go through. But I mean, it's just everything that you have done. I was looking at some of the books that you've written and just some of the courses that you've taught. You've done a lot. So
Mhm.
it's kind of hard to pinpoint and pick one thing or a couple of things in your career that, I mean, I guess maybe you find a sense of joy out of, but it sounds like ultimately you just find joy or find a sense of, I guess, accomplishment in helping others
Mhm.
in this world, this realm of tech.
Yeah, I think I used to always say, like, what is it? I see that these other, because like people always say, oh, you did so much. But I just see them as avenues of communicating the same message pretty much over and over again. So the books have the same message as most of the courses. And it's the idea of just taking the agency in your own life and kind of getting in front of what it is you want to accomplish and how you want to create it. And if you're really specific about it, you can, I only want to do this type of work in this type of area in this type of way. You can do that too. I've just never been that way, but I've pretty much had the same message across the board. I'm just like, even in the books, it's like, you're in charge of this thing. You can take charge of it and you can run it. Whether it's tech, you can take charge, you can run it. When I'm in the classroom with students, when it's sociology, most of that teaching is based on, I want them to know how the society works so they can know how to govern their own lives. So while it is a group type mindset that comes into the social science world, I still push the same type of message saying, you're in charge. And if you can actually see the rules of the game and how it works and how things unfold, then you can take many more risk and a lot more chances and do a lot more things with your career without feeling like you're losing anything or you're not getting to where you want to get to. Being a little bit more explorative is, I think, important.
I did. Okay, so being that you're an instructor and we're talking about being able to identify talents or areas for a student to be directed in, how much freedom with today? I mean, I don't know if you're doing everything online or if you're physically in a classroom, but how much freedom do you feel as an instructor, a professor, to direct your students and be that mentor? Do you feel like you have those freedoms or is it limited?
I feel like they're there. So the majority of my teaching was face to face before the pandemic. And so I've always been a face to face instructor for the most part, but I've taught online simultaneously pretty much throughout my whole career. I think this year, oh, actually, I did teach. Never mind. I taught in the spring semester. I'm about to say this year is probably the first year I didn't teach. No, I taught in the spring semester. And I feel comfortable in that space because I just start sharing the authentic stories that shaped who I am and how I came to the point of standing in front of them to some degree. And through that, I'll have students email me questions or they'll ask to, stay after class or they'll come by the office or they start to assert themselves and try to say, well, this woman seems like a whole lot of, she got information that I can use. So let me see if I can tap into it. And I can tell you, it's been students all across the spectrum. There's no specific ethnicity, race, or socioeconomic status or anything that I have not managed to have some type of mentor relationship with for some area of their careers to some degree. As long as
Oh,
they come to me, I feel comfortable. So I just want to address that.
oh no,
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
problem. Understood. Understood. I mean, and that's good. I mean, you
Uh-huh.
definitely want the engagement and you want the inquiry from students. I mean, even for myself, when I first graduated from high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know what I wanted to do professionally. And I wished I had some of the individuals around me that were more into programming and
Mhm.
into more database management. I wished I had that around me back then because I really enjoy it. I've worked
Mhm.
as a network engineer. I did your basic technical support. I'm embarking on QA manual testing now, but I wished I could have been introduced into these things earlier. And I do
Mhm.
want to touch base on what you mentioned before. In my career, just my experiences, I used to watch the keynotes, or I still do, of Apple, introducing whatever their products or software being released, and they pan across the audience. And I'm looking across the audience that they're panning, and I'm seeing diversity, but I'm
Mhm.
still not seeing people that look like me and you
Mhm.
in that
Yeah.
in the form of black faces, and we kind of have a double-edged sword against us. We are black women. I'm
Mhm.
not seeing that.
Yeah. And
And
so that's just, oh, go ahead.
no, 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 you go ahead.
No, I'm saying that's one of those things that's a very common. So I'll say this. I recently was asked to do a TED talk for AI technology. And I'm gonna tell you, the idea that it was a TEDx talk, for whatever reason, it just really got the best of me. And I can mind you, I get a little nervous before I do things, but I think that's natural and it's perfectly okay. But this particular time, it just got the best of me. I was like, oh Lord, what if I do this? What if I say this? The regular stuff that you go through when you think you're overthinking it. And what really flipped the switch for me was the fact that I realized I looked in the mirror and I was in a hotel room and I was like, girl, you are a 42-year-old African American woman that does not come from, you are a first generation college student and you are being asked to do a TED talk. You have a PhD. I was like, this is so not about you. It's not even funny. So you need to go ahead and get rid of all that anxiety because this has nothing to do with you. And because I saw the bigger picture, I was like, somebody needs to see this so that they can feel that it is a room that they would be accepted into. Now, everybody doesn't need that, right? Because some of us can be pioneers and we can go, you know, charge into these rooms where nobody looks like us and feel perfectly comfortable. But for all the people that do need that and that will show them that it's available to them, I think that we have to keep that in mind. It would definitely help you with your career and what you actually do. You stop thinking about yourself so much and you say, there's a group of women who needs to see this and I need to be, because I'm so positioned to be able to bring it to them. I need to step into that mindset and be that, you know?
You know what? It's that thing where I have a platform and I'm going to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And what you use your platform for. You know, there's a lot of talking being done,
Mm-hmm.
but the problem is the speech, is the lesson, is the delivery, is it something that people can use? Is it
Mm-hmm.
uplifting? Is it empowering? Is it informational or educational? So that's another thing we have to try to put ourselves in a lane and find out what it is. What is the message that we're trying to send?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that you did have the opportunity to do the TED Talk, and I did see that. And it's for UNT, am I correct?
Yes.
All
Mhm.
right, my daughter attends there.
Oh,
uh,
so cool. That's why I was teaching.
yeah, she's in attendance there as well. But AI, you know that's an. I mean, the whole idea and concept of tech is so broad. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many areas that you can embark on and partake in that don't require, you know, programming. And, you know, because most people, that's what they think of is
Yes. Mm-hmm.
being a developer and being a programmer. And that's
Mm-hmm.
another thing. There's so many things I want to touch on. But if there are listening, we have young Black women who are listening, but to anyone, but specifically, I want to speak to Black women at this age, at this point. What if they are looking to get into the tech industry or the tech field, or if they're currently studying? Now, I know that you've got a lot of degrees here,
Mm-hmm.
and you may not be able to speak to one specific, but
Mm-hmm.
how can they what do they need to do in order to get the visibility that they need to learn and get these opportunities to get with the companies, to get the
Mm-hmm.
positions and have the platform? What would you say would be instrumental for them?
You have to be very assertive. And the reason why I say that is because when you're not the likely candidate, people are not going to seek you out. And I can promise you that. I sat in classrooms plenty of times over the years with, all men, first of all. That was very common. And then a lot of foreign people from Asia, very big deal. And so when you don't look like or act like or conduct yourself, when you don't wear the uniform, I'll call it that, of the group that you are trying to step inside of, the only way for you to be able to show what you are capable of or to create the opportunities for you to learn more is for you to be assertive. It's like people almost have to get knocked upside the head, for lack of a better term, by your abilities
Right.
sometimes in order for them to put those abilities into use. And I still this happens to this day. I always tell people you gotta let that go. I let that go so long ago. When I was in my late 20s, I remember working at Dallas colleges. I would be standing right next to people who were ranking lower than me, trainees and stuff, and they had the uniform, they had the look. They would walk right up to us and talk directly to them. How do I do? I'm trying to figure blah 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 out, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, I'm just a trainee. Ask her." And you have to just get immune to that. It's if you can't get past that, you have a lot of trouble in this industry if you can't get past people underestimating you. But there's something really lovely about being underestimated that I can't really explain. But if you're able to latch on to that, it's a beautiful experience.
You know, my dad used to tell me that he used to thrive off the powers that be overlooking him.
Hmm.
And then when they realized that, you know, this Black man has sense and can speak eloquently, he just said, you know, that gives you a sense of power
Hmm.
and presence that, you know, you didn't realize you had, or not necessarily
Hmm.
you, because you knew you had it.
Hmm.
But then they're looking at you and they are so amazed
Hmm. So,
at
so
It's astounding. It's astounding.
It's so funny.
It's ridiculous. It's like, and and then we're just in this, we're always second guessed. We're always
Hmm.
and where we're constantly having to prove ourselves. And,
Oh man, yeah.
this can apply to any industry,
Hmm.
not just in the tech world. It's just everywhere in the medical and
Hmm.
education and in everything you could possibly think of. It's like we're constantly having to, and we have the credentials.
Yeah, so it's not, and it's not even about performance, because I think it was one of Malcolm Gladwell books. I believe it was either Outliers. I think it was Outliers, where he was talking about some of the black lawyers in the from highly ranking established Ivy schools and their white counterparts, and how that the difference from their backgrounds only made a difference up until they went into practice. When they went into practice, the African American lawyers were generally doing much better than their counterparts. The outcomes were higher. And I was thinking about that, how it's just something that comes from a background where it's not generationally something that you had access to. So I always say
Right.
it's not that I don't know and I can't do. It's just that I wasn't aware. But once I'm made aware, get out of the way. You know what I mean? It's like
Exactly.
once and it's not even about. I always say I've never been angry or bothered about that in a really negative way, because I've always seen it kind of similar to your father as an opportunity to shock and awe. And so for a while, it was always like, oh, I will run home. I can't believe this. I said the same thing, and it was the same exact. And then I started, like, now that where I'm at in my career now, I have a constant reminder that says you have nothing to prove. If people want to know anything about what you're capable of and what you can do, they can clearly jump online and see all you. So it's not about that. It's about small mindedness. And you have to tell the world that you're not going to play that game. I'm like, nah, I'm not going to play that game. I'm just going to continue to be great. And whenever you take the time to see it, it benefits this institution, then you'll have access to it. But no, there's too much access to everything now to play small games. So I can honestly say that's a benefit of being in tech industry or medical industry. There's so many avenues you can take where you can be rewarded and seen, that you don't have to limit yourself to institutions that don't see you.
Your journey honestly is relatable to so many people. The fact that you paid your own way through school,
Mhm.
so many people can relate to that, and so many people are discouraged in the same breath by that, and they're defeated before they even get started.
Mhm.
And they're like, well, my family doesn't have the money to send me here or to pay for this. And so at that point, you're stopped, you're halted, and you don't
Mhm.
think that, what, there are things that I can do in order to help me obtain whatever the ultimate goal is, so that I can, make a better pathway for myself and my future. Let's talk about that, your journey, and what it took and what you did to keep from being discouraged in order to get all of the degrees and license the certifications that you have.
I think a lot of it was, well, like you say, I didn't come from a background where education was a primary focus. It was go to school, but my family was definitely entrepreneurs. My mom and dad always worked for themselves in some kind of way. But I was always the one that said often, I'm just not a hustler. I was like, I don't want to hustle. I want to get a skill set. I want to do something really specific. Like that was just my mindset always back in the day. And so starting off early on, I was discouraged because, when you say you want to do these things and create, and, you look back and you look at your resources and you go, well, there's nobody that can help me do this, right? You can get bitter about that, and then, go down the path of being bitter and working jobs and just never developing that part of yourself. But I was just talking about this the other day. I don't know what that thing is that's in some people that decide, well, I'm just crazy enough to go ahead and think I should start this journey. And that was kind of the thing. Every semester was a new journey and a new hurdle. It was like, okay, where am I going to live for this semester? How much money can I make doing this job, and where can I? So it was always a thing of maneuvering and staying on your toes, like being your own project manager, looking into the future, but not so far into the future that you overwhelm yourself. and always managing money. Man, I became amazing at budgeting no money. And then
Right.
and so the encouragement, I think, came from just the idea that I didn't the alternative was dim. Like like, I was never along my journey presented with an alternative that seemed like it was so much better than the path of just becoming an academic and going all the way in with it, you know?
Right, right, right. Well,
Yeah.
I, in all honesty, we have to kind of take we're just kind of living, we're going through
Mhm,
life and we're trying to, some people have hard goals, they actually have a plan, and others of us are just kind to doing the day to day thing.
mhm.
But we don't ever really get an opportunity to sit back and reflect on our accomplishments, and sometimes even our failures. What I want to ask you is, of everything that you've gone through and everything that you've accomplished, obtained, have you impressed yourself?
Now, as a woman, I've read your things too, and you've done a lot. So I think you probably know the answer to this question. Very, very seldom. I think that that is something that I definitely have been trying to work on at this point in my life. Because I'm like, at what point do you get to tell yourself, you know what, you've done a good job. It's okay. You're fine.
Right,
Like, at what point do you pat yourself? And it takes a lot. I think one of them was definitely finishing a PhD because I started down the road of tossing it out the window so many times. I was like, I don't need to be validated by this system. This is too hard. There's so much stuff. And it was always, it was a constant maneuvering and learning new things and digging and digging. And so that was one where I've had moments where I looked around and said, wow, well, you did that. That's amazing. That's cool. And then when I have the occasional moment where for some reason I'm going through something that I did online and it's something that I forgot about, and I'm reading the context of it, like a presentation or something, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And so,
right.
but it's rarely in real time. It's rarely in real time. No.
I keep hearing something that comes up in your conversation here. You keep saying validation. Now, as far as validation is concerned, in your opinion, and you've kind of already touched on it, but is validation important? Is it something that
Mm,
we should maybe strive and prove to ourselves, or is it something that we should constantly try to prove? Because you have to keep in mind, we're doing these things, and you constantly have people looking at you and they are diminishing or
mhm.
making you feel as if it's not enough.
Or it's not important or it's regular.
Right, right. Anybody can do that. That term,
I've had
a
people say
trained
that kind of
monkey.
stuff to me several times, but at this point in my life, I understand that it's insecurity. I don't. It's. I used to internalize it and to go, "Oh, I mean, I'm not doing enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not creating enough. I'm not being enough." But I clearly know now that it's just insecurity, and any of us can be guilty of it at any given time. I'm just ahead of it in myself, and with the way I approach people and things, I get in front of it, but it's very common for when you're a person that just do a lot of things because they interest you and you're not trying to show off or seek their validation, for people to diminish things that you do to make themselves feel better. I think that's a common thing. And then also the validation part, I think early on, because we all come with these little childhood traumas from our upbringings, the validation part might be really strong for a lot of people. Like, I want people to look at me and say, hey, but when you really start to do these things for yourself and start to create your own personal constitution, that's what I like to call it, you're not really looking for this outside validation from other people. And matter of fact, when they give it to you, it's, oh, that's cool. And if they don't give it to you, you're like, that's cool too. You get to that place where you can sift through what you need to take in, and then the stuff that is not really set up to help to be a catalyst for your growth. You're like, this is not a positive feedback that's meant for my growth. And these other things that people are saying, while they're great all the time, it doesn't really mean that I've made it for my own, you know,
Hmm.
level of acceptance. So I think that in the beginning you do place a lot of validation on other people and what they have to say about what you're doing. And I think that it comes to a point in your career where you, maybe after the 10,000 hours or after the 10 years in one direction or working on yourself and your goals, where you get to the point where you're like, I don't really have anything to prove. If you can't just, look at this track record and say she can be a great fit here or she cannot, then that's where you get to. I think that's a healthy place to be.
And how much of that, during our journey do we encounter imposter syndrome?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And I've done several conversations on imposter syndrome at events and things like that. That's a very common one because you walk into the room and you know that you don't have the same pedigree as a lot of people that you are in the same room as, but at the same time, you realize that your resilience and your agility has put so much in you that other people in the room don't have and that they don't bring. And it's not to say that you're better in some way, is that you have a grit to you that's so valuable in these environments that you have to know is real. And so the imposter syndrome only comes up when you start to second guess who you are and what you have based on the probably diminishing comments from other people. And I just have resolved myself to, you have the ability to do anything and everything that people bring to your table. So like you bring it to me, you say, let's do this. I'm going to say, what do I need? What are the tools? How can I get it started? Who are some people that's done it already and how did they get through it? Because I just
Right.
don't believe that any humans are so much more impressive and better than other humans that we all can't do great things.
Yeah, it's always you get to see the human element in these people that we put on pedestals and they
Hmm.
seem so great to us. But what I can appreciate just as I'm getting older is although someone appears to have a resume of all of these feats and these successes and these accomplishments and they're great, they're vast.
Hmm.
It's always refreshing to see that there's a human element and to hear that person say, you know what, that was hard for me.
Hmm.
That was a difficult moment, and I felt alone. I did feel defeated at times. I did feel discouraged because, we kind of get, when we're looking from the outside in, we get this, we just kind of feel that nothing can touch this person.
Oh yeah, I've watched people and thought that for a while, but I'm like, that's not even, because I'm telling you this, but in the background. So you're saying all this degree, that was all through my 30s. I was going through a divorce when my children were 2 and 1 years old, and that is enough right there. I didn't have the support for the things that I needed to do for my career. My daughters were with me in the back of my classrooms, like all of their childhood. And
Wow.
with little laptops in front of them and headsets, either sitting right outside the door, or either in the very back of the corner of the room. And my degree is going to take my courses. They were sitting in the classes with me at UTD when I was taking my classes too, when they were doing their homework for school, sitting next to me. And people would always say, they're so well behaved. And I'm like, I don't think they have a choice because this is our life.
Right.
And so these things, yes, there were terrible moments of defeated feelings, lots of them. I remember going for jobs, and sometimes I think when you're a person that's really striving for a lot and you have like this energy in you that's really hungry, some people, they don't really like that energy because it reflects something in them that they don't like. And so I've been in rooms where I know I was only brought there to be humiliated, you know? And you're just sitting there thinking like they knew what I was capable of. They knew what I could do. Why am I even here if they knew they weren't
Right.
going to choose me? And so there was several of those moments. But at the end of the day, every time I kept telling myself that, you know what, this is my journey. This is what they said would happen on that journey. And I can't allow it to, you know, make me feel defeated enough to let the opposition win, whatever the opposition was at any given time, even if the
See,
opposition was myself.
that's right. And you know what?
Mhm.
That's why I'm saying I'm speaking to you, Jameelah, as a Black woman who is also in the tech field, and we know that this industry is super challenging. There's so many there's so many people that want to look down on you and not give you the respect. And that's
Mhm.
really what it is. Give you the
It's respect,
respect
yeah.
Yeah, give you the respect. And, as Black women, we're constantly told that she's too aggressive, she's
Mhm.
argumentative, and our passion is confused
Mhm.
or compared to being disagreeable,
Mhm.
insubordinate. You know, we
Yes.
have so much that we're at odds with.
Mhm.
And then, there's that side, our personal side. You don't know what people are going through.
Mm-mm.
You don't know what's the motivation behind this hunger.
Yeah.
And I can relate to a lot of the things that you're saying. Going through a divorce is not, I don't think it's easy on anyone,
Mm-mm.
especially if it's someone who wanted the divorce. I mean, I'm sorry, not wanted the marriage, but now you find yourself in a divorce and you've got children and you got to
Mhm.
try to make it.
Yeah.
So many people can relate to that. And that's why it's not specific to a Black woman's struggle.
Mm-mm.
Anybody who's walked this path, and they can relate to, and they can say, well, you know what, she didn't give up.
Yes.
She didn't become so defeated that she was paralyzed and stopped.
Yes.
And I think that's a testament to you, and I thank you for sharing that, because not only would I be inspired by that, but I know that there's a listener out there that can be, because life is not going to be easy.
Oh, no, no. Everything doesn't stop because you like working on a goal. And it's like, okay, like the universe doesn't go, okay, let me leave her alone because she's really trying to work on this degree. Doesn't.
No.
And then you're also cleaning out a lot of things that wasn't working for you in your life when you start working on these big goals and accomplishing things, but the remnants of those things are still gonna peek its way into your life and cause a ruckus a little bit. And I always say the least entertainment you have for the things that aren't working for you, the better off you'll be no matter where you are on your journey, you know.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed our discussion, and I just knew that this was going to be fruitful, and it was going to be eye-opening, and really just empower. I seek empowerment primarily to our community,
Mhm.
because we have so many obstacles beset for us, and so much. Y'all don't do that, and we've
Mhm.
we've gotten into the mindset too that we tell each other that Black people don't do
Yes.
that.
Or
You
not
know,
supporting people unless it's singing, dancing, or
yes.
sports.
And
It's
there's
like
so much more to us. I mean, people
there's
like
so
to say
much more there.
layers.
Yes. Mhm.
There's so much depth. There's so much versatility to our people. And we have to have individuals like yourself who have overcome all of these obstacles, which, were meant to tear you down.
Mhm.
They
Yes.
were meant
They
to defeat you.
they weren't meant to, cheer you on. It's like it's saying,
Never.
"Oh, do you really want this? Let's see."
Oh, you fixing to work for this. And
Yes.
and you know what? And this is why it's important. And this is why I asked the question, is you have worked for it. I asked the question, have you impressed
Mhm.
yourself? Because we have to take time out, and it's not braggadocious. It's not arrogance. It's just, you know what? Look at me on paper, and compare that to the things that I had to go through, or the things I was going through
Mhm.
as I was accomplishing these goals.
Yes,
And you have to pat yourself on your back sometimes.
you do. I'm just
We
sitting there listening to you thinking about it. I'm staring off thinking, "You are absolutely right. That is." Yeah, that is something that we do not spend enough time
No, it's
because you're
so
you're
important
often
to
told you're
celebrate.
bragging or you're arrogant or something like that. So I've even gotten to the point in my life where things great are happening. I don't even share them. And I know that we shouldn't be that way, but that's kind of what that realm pushes you into. Are you showing off? Are you being too this and that? And so definitely I'm gonna come back away from hiding that.
And you
'Cause
shouldn't,
yeah.
because nobody knows, only you know your struggle, and only you know the intent of your share.
Mhm.
And not to say that there aren't people out there who are doing that, but that doesn't
Mhm.
have to be you. And I just want, you yourself to know that you have I mean, like I said, just reading your about me, I was so inspired, and it was like I would love for my about me to be something similar to that.
Your
And
about me is amazing. I don't know. I think we all need somebody to tell us. I was like, "Oh, wow, she's doing it." And so, but I read your stuff a long time ago when I first saw your name, and so
oh wow, oh
and I
wow.
was like, "Oh yeah, this is definitely a good connection." And then almost a year later, look, it's pretty cool that
It
we
is.
finally,
It's
yeah,
all timing. It's definitely all timing. But
yeah.
I do want to say first and foremost, thank you again. I appreciate you for finding time in your busy schedule to add me to your calendar, and we finally were able to meet. I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing your journey and the different things that you've gone through. I believe that everything that you've said, that it's not limited to a certain group of people, an industry. I think this is definitely something that most people can
Mhm.
relate to in whatever their path in life is going to be. And before we do go, I want to give you an opportunity to, if you want to thank someone, or you want to give kudos, if there are any projects that you want to share, any more books or the current books that you have that you'd like for people to pick up, please let us know.
Okay. Well, all of my books are on jamrabooks.com. So I have everything's on Amazon. It's under my name, Jameelah Ra'oof. So if you go to Amazon and just put my name in, I have everything listed there. I even have a new audiobook that's from the book I wrote called White Spaces. And it talks about a lot of what we discussed today because it's a sociological text about the experience that Black women have when they get off the beaten path and they go into these environments where people don't look like them, and so one of the nuances you experience in those environments. So I really love White Spaces, and the audiobook is amazing. The reader, Joy Vandervoort Cobb, she's also a professor too, and it's an amazing project, and I'm so happy we collaborated on it. And I just want to thank you for this platform. I think the name is amazing. I thought it was so cool, End User Talk, and I was just like, that is so clever. I just kept going on about it to my fiance. I was like, this is so cool.
Well,
And I
thank
just
you.
like the idea that you create an environment for us to be able to have these type of conversations because it's always needed. And I think when people are working on their dreams and goals, they're wondering, is there a need? Do people want to? Yes, 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 they do. It's just you may not see it in the mainstream environments, but people are always seeking information like this and hearing from the anomalies in the tech environment and some of the people's stories who actually made it in those environments. I think that this is amazing what you're doing, and I'm praying for it. I'm excited for it that it continues to grow and be something that you can maybe pass on to your daughters. I think that would be a very, very cool thing.
Thank you. I appreciate
Outcome.
it.
And
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you for this time. I really enjoyed it.
Same here, and you're welcome back at any time. I definitely love to hear about any more TED Talks that you have, or any other events. But you're
Yes.
welcome back anytime. Thank you, and continued success and peace of mind in your journey going forward.
Yes. Thank you so much.
We've come to the close of another episode of the End User Talk podcast. I hope that what you've heard today will leave you feeling empowered. Thank you for listening. And remember, every day's a training day.